Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thought Leader Talks. To put it simply, if you're an MSP, you've been tubbed. Our thought leader for the month is a name ubiquitous with mentoring MSPs, Richard Tubb. Richard's blog has been a cornerstone in the MSP industry for over 15 years, with over 3,000 blog posts to help MSP owners. When you have a talk with Richard, you'd understand perfectly well why. He's passionate about helping MSPs grow and scale their business, and he's very generous with sharing his proven insights. All of them based on over 2 decades of solid IT experience, building a hugely successful MSP from the ground up, and as a trusted advisor to hundreds of MSPs and enterprises on small IT business growth. Hi, Richard, and great to meet you.
Thank you, Teresa. Wow, what an introduction. I feel as though you've set the bar for me really high. I better give good value here.
I'm sure you will. And talking about security, so phishing and social engineering scams have gone up by 400% in Q4 2020. The spike in malware attacks and various breaches, MSP breaches that have made the news, have made cybersecurity a key business focus for MSPs. So, what are some essential security best practices for MSPs that you recommend?
Yeah, so as we are recording this, there has been 2 massive breaches in the MSP industry. We've got SolarWinds, we've got Kaseya, it's all over the news and everywhere else. So right now, MSPs are feeling very, very vulnerable because cyber criminals are targeting MSPs, and they're doing so for a reason, because MSPs are gatekeepers. They hold the keys to the whole kingdom. If you can hack an MSP, you gain access to all of the clients. And so it's scary times. The first thing I would say to MSPs everywhere who are worrying about their cybersecurity side of things is, put in place the basic essential cybersecurity strategies. So I am not teaching anybody here anything they don't already know, but make sure that your clients and your staff are using strong passwords, that you're using password managers, not written down passwords or anything. This sounds obvious, Teresa, but how many of we know people in our industry who use really simple passwords and the same password for everything? It's a really bad idea. The other thing is multi-factor authentication. If you've got a smartphone, you can use MFA, or two-factor authentication, as some people call it. So make sure that you and your clients have got to have a password, a strong password, and a code that's generated to get in. So that's the basics, but we've got to be really careful here. It's not a case of do as I say, but don't do as I do. As MSPs, we have got to be doing that internally.
That's true.
We've got to make sure all of our systems have got 2FA, strong passwords. We're using password managers. This is not a case of we say to the client, you do it, but it's a bit difficult, so we won't bother doing it. You will get caught out. So it's about the culture of the business. Make sure you are doing that first and foremost. And when it comes to what we're seeing at the moment, which is a lot of supply chain attacks, RMM vendors or PSA vendors, the MSP tools that we use getting hacked, and then cyber criminals getting in. Look, I'm going to be really upfront here and say that as managed service providers, we can do the very best due diligence. We can ask the right questions. We can put in place security measures. But at the end of the day, if somebody is targeting a vendor to attack, they will find a way in eventually. So it's inevitable that this is going to happen. So what I would say here, Teresa, to any MSPs watching this is start to investigate cyber security insurance.
Okay.
Now, and this is not just for you as an MSP, but saying to your clients, hey, here's something we can do. Now, lots of MSPs, when I've had this conversation about cybersecurity insurance, have pushed back and said, the clients shouldn't need insurance, they've got us. But we can't keep everybody safe. We can't do that. We will do our best for them, but we can't keep them safe. So for anybody watching this who hasn't got cybersecurity insurance for your business, and I'm talking about specialist insurance, I'm not talking about your standard public liability and business indemnity insurance. I want you to go wherever you're watching us in the world, go to a specialized local insurance broker in your geography and say, hey, we need to keep our business we need to mitigate the risk through insurance. And secondly, we've got a lot of clients who are going to need this insurance as well. Can you be our partner and help our clients and ourselves through this? So for MSPs watching, I don't want you to become an insurance specialist yourself,
right?
Because it opens up a whole load of liability to you and lots of other challenges. But I do want you to build a relationship with an insurance broker who knows the IT market. And I think good cybersecurity practices alongside cybersecurity insurance, then you can sleep easier of a night.
That's true. Another, talking about security a bit more, another significant way to, to blunt the impact of a data breach has been data business continuity and disaster recovery planning, a solid BCDR plan. It reduces downtime and it helps your business to get back on track ASAP. So what aspects, in your opinion, would be central to an effective BCDR plan, but tailored for an MSP?
Yeah, great question. So if you'd had asked me that question 2 years ago,
right,
I would have said you can find some BCDR software, a cloud hosting provider, and maybe a little box that sits in the corner. You'll back everything up every 15 minutes, half an hour, you'll be good to go. But this little thing called the COVID-19 pandemic happened. And as we mentioned earlier, members of staff are now dotted all over the world, all over the place in different locations. So whilst there is still a need for traditional backup and disaster recovery, with most solutions now being in the cloud, I want MSPs to have a look and see if this service wasn't available, how could we keep our clients keep running? I'll give you a really good, a simple example. Email, calendar, contacts, that type of thing, whether you use Google, Microsoft 365 or another provider. As an MSP, you probably make an assumption that the provider does all the backups for you. And you would probably be right. But when's the last time you tried to recover some data from that service? So I can tell you from experience, we use Google Workspace, which is all backed up. We use it within my team. But if we want to restore an email or we want to track through, look for something specific, if you go to Google and say, look, we want you to restore that email, they'll say, sure, we'll get back to you in a week.
Right.
And you have to wait for them. And it's not much fun at all. So there's an opportunity here for MSPs, again, lower your cost of support, increase your revenue, to go out to clients and talk about email archiving solutions, to talk about SaaS cloud backup solutions. So we use a tool internally, Teresa, that backs up our Google Workspace. And if we need to restore an email or a calendar or a mailbox, anything like that, we can go in and within a few clicks, it's pulled it all out. We don't have to rely on Google. So it speeds up the time to recovery. And when it comes to disaster recovery, I want MSPs to be looking at their clients' software as a service applications and saying, if that provider lost the data, what have we done to mitigate the risk? Here's another way of looking at it. If our client came to us and said, we want to move away from this provider to that provider, how would you help them to do the backup and restore between the two services? So it's still backup and disaster recovery, but it's a slightly different mindset that goes into it. But there's a huge amount of growth for MSPs here in offering their clients software as a service backup solutions. So you're backing up cloud-based services. It seems crazy, but it's necessary.
That's true. And, that's an important point that you raised. Backup is only as good as recovery. So, just having a namesake backup won't get you much when you're struck with data loss, So.
Yeah. Can I throw one other thing in there to do with backup as well? We've got this distributed workforce working all around. Everybody's now got their own router, maybe a network switch, firewall, all of these different things going on. There's an opportunity, I think, for MSPs to provide their clients with a automated backup service for network equipment.
Okay.
So speaking as a techie, as a geek, I used to be an engineer and I used to make changes to firewalls, to switches. And I can tell you that the amount of times that I made a change and then I got distracted, and then I went back and I was like, what was the change I made?
Right.
Have I broken anything? Did I click save? And then from a cybersecurity perspective as well, it's like, has somebody else made a change here that I'm not aware of? So I think there's an opportunity, and there's a whole new set of tools out there that enable MSPs to back up configurations on network equipment, track the changes, and restore to previous backups as well if they need to. So just food for thought there, and I think that'll become more important as the MSP industry grows.
That's true. Yeah, and moving, onto cloud backup, the cloud backup market is expected to grow to USD 4.13 billion in 2022. What suggestions would you give MSP seeking to expand their business by tapping into this lucrative market?
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, if you are selling hosted email, cloud-based email, contacts, things like that, don't rely on the manufacturer, on the vendor backup. I want you to be adding a backup service that you can either sell into your clients or you can offer in as part of the managed service bundle. Again, you're going to lower your cost of support. You're going to increase your revenue. Absolutely important. Anything that you would miss if it failed, you need to be backing up. So we've already talked about network configuration. We've talked about email, calendar, contacts. What about your online accounting system the online accounting system that your clients have? Most of them have got a facility in there to make a backup, but it's a manual process.
Right.
So could you be setting reminders? You could set a recurring ticket within your help desk system to say, hey, we need to go in and back up QuickBooks, or we need to go in and back up Xero. Could you script something that goes and does those backups there, or could you find a service that does it? And I'll throw out another big area that I see MSPs overlooking. Traditionally, we've always backed up servers. We don't really bother about workstations so much. But even with cloud services, is there workstations within your client's infrastructure that are critical to the business running? Right. So a good example might be, I know lots of engineering companies who have got an old PC in the corner that runs the payroll software. If that PC dies, none of the staff get paid. That is a critical workstation. Wow. So you should be backing that up so that if the hardware fails, you can spin up a virtual machine and still keep it running. Another example would be salespeople's PCs, or managing director or CEO's PCs. Right. We would encourage them, Teresa, not to store files on the computer, to store it in the cloud. Right. But we all know that people, they store it on the C drive and in local folders and things. If they lose that hardware, or if that hardware fails, they're going to lose all that equipment. So I would encourage MSPs watching this to have a look at critical workstations that need to be backed up as well. Run through the business workflows and identify all the weak spots. Yeah. Exactly. Yes, you've put it very concisely there. Thank you.
So moving on to metrics. Metrics can be a guiding light for all organizations, for all of us. What are some of the key metrics that MSP should monitor, and how can they measure some crucial but intangible parameters like customer satisfaction?
Oh, so if we start with customer satisfaction, actually, and then I'll give some of the metrics just to answer the question that way. Customer satisfaction is massively overlooked in the MSP industry, I would suggest. So customer satisfaction is, there's two areas to it. So MSPs really should be on an interaction by interaction basis, asking their clients, how did we do? So that means if you've got a professional services automation tool, you may not have it turned on, but you've probably got an option at the bottom of every ticket that you close to say, hey, how did we do? Now, the response rate to these is incredibly low. So I spoke to one MSP, and it's typically around 1% of people respond to that. Yeah. But there are tools out there that I would encourage people to go and look at that can make it a lot simpler for clients to give feedback. So investigate those tools, because a good response rate you should be looking to get is between 40 and 50%. Wow. Now, if you're watching this and you've never had any response, you're thinking, no way. I can tell you, I speak to MSPs that have 40 to 50% of their response rate. And then what it means is when a ticket comes back and the client's like, that's great, brilliant. But if it comes back and it's not so great, then you need to take manual action, jump on the phone and say, hey, I noticed, is there anything we can do to fix this situation? Right. So that's the first thing, ongoing customer service. And the second one I'd throw out there, if any MSPs watching this are unfamiliar with what's called Net Promoter Score, NPS. Right. So Net Promoter Score is basically a single question that you would ask your clients, not after every ticket, but maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, every month, you decide. But it's basically on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to someone else? And what happens is, I've learned this the hard way from running an MSP. If people give you a 9 or a 10, they are fans. You are doing a good job. But if people give you an 8 or a 7, it means, I'm not so sure about it. If they give you below a 7, right, I would be picking the phone up to them and saying, oh, how can we help? All of this for managed service providers is a way of keeping your finger on the pulse of the client's relationship and seeing what is going on there. So, customer satisfaction, CSAT as it's known, a Net Promoter Score. These are two things that you can integrate. We could probably do a whole video just around those, Teresa. So I'll stop there, but I would encourage anybody watching this to go and check it out, because customer satisfaction, hugely important. Now, in terms of KPIs, key performance indicators, it can depend MSP to MSP. Some MSPs are just starting out. Other MSPs are a sales machine and are growing and that. So it really depends on the business as to what key performance indicator, what metric is important to you. But one I would say that all MSPs can keep a track on, and a common one I get asked about is, how many engineers should I have in the business? So a KPI that could be interesting to a lot of businesses is the technician to node ratio. What I mean by that is, how many client endpoints is each technician looking after? So typically, research has shown me, if that figure is between, say, 250 and 400, so if you've got one engineer and they're looking after 250, 400 endpoints, great. If they are looking after more than that, so let's say they're looking after 600, 800, you might be overworking your engineers and they might not be giving the same level of service that they really should do. You will notice that because your customer satisfaction will go down if you're measuring. But if you've got one engineer who's maybe looking after 150 or 200, you probably, I'm not going to say lazy here, but there's probably some room for improvement there because they could be doing more stuff. So tech to node ratio, I think, is an important one. The other one people ask me about quite often is like, how many tickets per day should my technicians be looking after? And I think, again, we could talk about this at length, but if it's a first line technician, I mean, help desk and things, if they're looking after 10, 20 tickets per day, that's a decent place to be. Of course, I know people are going to be watching this and they're going to be saying, well, my engineers look after 100, or it's like, if that works for you, great. But I'm just speaking from what I see out in the market as well. And so there's two service desk or service delivery metrics. The other one I want to throw out is a financial metric. And so businesses say to me, well, how can I tell whether I'm doing well or not? So two metrics that you would look into the gross margin. Okay. So, and gross margin, you can work out, the revenue that you generate minus the cost of doing business. That's going to be your gross margin calculation there. So gross margin is really important, and that should be going up. But the other one is, if you are a managed service provider, how much in percentage terms of your revenue is recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, MRR, as we call it in the industry. So my research, I speak to lots of MSPs, big, small, in between. So typically, best in class is around 70%. So if 70% of your revenue is recurring revenue, you're doing a good job, I would say. And of course, that differs depending on what stage of growth you're at. But those are the figures to aim for. So I've thrown out a lot of information there.
Great.
I'm glad this is recorded. People can maybe rewind and play it back. But hopefully, those are some useful metrics for people.
great metrics. Richard, it's been wonderful talking to you, and you've provided wonderful insights that I'm sure will be very helpful to our MSPs, CSPs, resellers, VARs listening in. Thank you so much, Richard, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
My pleasure. I will say it's been a pleasure talking to you, Teresa. If any of your community wants to continue the conversation with me, I'm really easy to find online.
Right.
Just go along to my blog, www.tubblog.co.uk. You can find me on social media. Just do a search of Richard Tubb MSP. They will find me.
And you've got great podcast too.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yes, I love Tubb Talk, the podcast for IT consultants. So you can find it all on the blog. So.
Right. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thanks, Teresa. My pleasure.